One thing I like to tell people, because I still think back on it, and every so often it pops up in my Facebook memories, but like when I was 19, like, God, I might have even been 18 at the time, like fresh out of high school.
Sure.
18 going
Well,
on 19.
you've packed in a lot.
Yeah, I know.
Over the past few years.
Fresh out of high school.
Yeah.
That's when I got caught up in that organization I mentioned earlier.
Okay.
And I helped organize an impeachment protest against our local state senator because he was drafting the initial pandemic preparedness bill that would be invoked years later for COVID. Wow. And I was of the mentality that this was going to take away our liberties and freedoms, and that this was just a giant hoax. Mm-hmm. This was for, I believe, swine flu back in the day. Okay. The bill was H1N1. And yeah.
Oh, I remember that name.
Yeah.
H1N1.
We courted a whole bunch of different groups of people. I didn't care. I didn't have the foresight to know better, or foresight. And some of the people who I went to just for like bodies and for help and for support, they would show up with the science that, like swine flu's not real. This is the government trying to put things into your body against your consent, and they're going to like take your family and your kids and your property.
Well, it is
and
a liberty.
Here we are now, and
it is a liberty issue to think about mandates and the government response. I mean, those are real issues, and some of our government response was harmful, right? It shutting down businesses. I mean, it helped the big corporations, but I mean, I said this before. I've traveled around and I've seen so many, abandoned businesses and closed businesses, and I know people from my own community up in Fairbanks who, I activated to do some volunteer work, but the only reason that they had so much time to do volunteer work is because their businesses were failing at the time.
Oh yeah.
God bless them for trying to give back to the community.
Oh, for real.
That was shutting their basically shutting their businesses down. But
I'm not knocking that. No, by all means. But
then it's weird because there is the liberty aspect, but then it, then kind of some people come in who are bad actors,
right?
Who have conspiracy theories that are maybe unfounded, like giving people diseases and stuff that, it's harmful. Yeah. And it always shows up. That always shows up.
Right.
Yeah.
And the lengths you go to compartmentalize these things as well, because when I was that teenager,
because you want support.
Yeah. I was that teenager who was trying to fight this tyrannical government, as I thought, I was courting people who were of the mindset that, well, if you get the swine flu vaccine, you're going to contract autism.
Okay, yeah.
When people would ask me about that, I'd be like, that's not my belief. I just think we should have bodily autonomy. Right. If they want to show up, that's on them. This exact same kind of thing is what I faced these past few years. Yeah. And part of me was like, well, this is the natural order of things coming back to kind of bite me in the rear. But like, no, this is a very real contingency in our political system. And it has been there. It's there now. And I think it's going to be around in the future. And people have to know how to communicate with these other individuals in society.
Yeah, I'm just going to say it. I mean, we could be very civil about it. Yeah. I mean, you obviously have to be because you're a politician. But for me, I find these people just crass and hateful and paranoid and not helpful to anyone except for themselves. But you have a different position because you're a leader, and that's the tough part, right? Yeah. I could be an activist, I could be obnoxious and whatever. You have to consider everyone, and you have to actually talk to them. Yeah. So that's really tough, and I feel for you for that. That you have to do that.
I feel one thing that really to this day just completely threw me off is that there are people who are of that mindset that you may know now and who you just haven't hit that one issue yet to bring it out of them. Yeah. Because there were some people who got swept up in this hysteria that I would have never have guessed. There were people who I had known for years and who had worked within the community on other initiatives and projects. Yeah. And it felt like I was meeting someone for the first time.
Or if it becomes politicized. Yeah. Right? Because COVID became politicized at some point. Because I will tell you, Fairbanks is also a small community. It's like 40,000. Mm-hmm. And then in the borough, which is huge, which is probably, the size of the state, there's like 80,000. And they're like in little cabins, very distant. Wow. Yeah. I mean, I lived in a cabin too. It felt very remote. But you know, I organized people, like basically hundreds of people, to make masks from very little material, with no shipping coming into Alaska.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and we were scrounging. We were really scrounging, and we were helping other smaller communities as well. And these were people from across the political, spectrum. And so what happened was everybody was working together because, well, we didn't know that what the threat was like.
Yeah.
There was no information on it, and I feel like we're still working on COVID. Like, what is it? And where did it come from? And
people think we're out of it, but in reality, we just managed to strike a new reality.
Yeah, a new
for the time
relationship.
being.
Yeah, and so, but then it became politicized, and all of a sudden, the people that I was helping with this charity work, like even churches, were like coming online and being like, well, we're going to stop wearing masks now because the Republicans are saying, it's a hoax or something like that. And it was so strange because these are organizations that I gave masks to so that they could protect the people around them, especially like the older people, immunocompromised people who have cancer, and are, going through that kind of treatment. So it was strange to see that, like, it was an instant flip. All of a sudden, it was like overnight. And it was chilling. It felt chilling to me that could happen. Right. That it's politicized like that.
One moment that stuck out to me was there was an earlier meeting where a member of the community, it was the first time that I think we ever had to potentially adjourn a meeting because it was starting to get out of hand.
Did you have like a constable there? Or,
I guess that'd be me. But
Oh, okay, that was you. Because I didn't want to use that word, but like somebody who would control the meeting so that if people got out of hand.
For a handful of meetings, we did have a police presence. Okay. And that actually became a point of contention. Yeah. Because they were like, well, you're wasting tax dollars on a bunch of scared parents. And it's like, no, because we can't run a meeting. Right. Sure, you can be...
and there are rules to meetings. If people are shouting out, that's actually against the rules. Yeah. And even clapping sometimes, it's against the rules.
And that's actually one of the things that I'm referring to with this. It was in the earlier meeting, before things really started to take a turn. We actually had someone who... threatened us from the audience who was like, if I see any of you in public without your masks, as he was like marching out, and me and one of my colleagues on the board were just like, yo, is that a threat?
Yeah. And put it on record.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But that's the thing, like at that point was when masks became no longer about safety and started really becoming a political tool. Yeah. And that was kind of like a turning point for me. And I'm like, I wear a mask because I work with immunocompromised people. Right. Like, I was probably one of the last people on the board to actually stop wearing a mask, and that was only because I never really went out. Yeah. And at that point, society was really taking a turn. I wore my mask for as long as possible, and I still occasionally do if I know I'm going to be in a person-dense area.
A lot of people are vaccinated now. Yeah. So it's much less of a threat. I wore it as much as possible too because I was working with a lot of older people who were the seamstresses in the community. Of course I'm gonna try and protect them. Of course.
One thing that really sticks out to me is that throughout all of this, it was really isolated to just school committee. So here I am still having my regular library trustee meetings. It's effectively a library board.
What is the next step up in government from that? Like a county
I would say, all right, so you have...
Do you have like a city organization or?
For us, I would say the Board of Selectmen, which is akin to a town council or a city hall, you have them, and I would put them on the same level as school committee, school board. And then after that, you have a couple county level positions, but county level government in Massachusetts is really just procedural at this point. It doesn't... There are a couple remnants from yesteryears, but like governor's council, which used to serve as like the legislature before there was a legislature.
Is that because it's kind of a small state? Or?
Yeah, I guess in early Massachusetts history, there was a point in time where the state was big. And in order to really
because everybody was walking and riding a horse.
Of course. And in order to get proper representation, you had the governor's council, which effectively acts as a legislature with people elected from different counties. Yeah. And We still have that now. It's not a legislature. It's kind of like it meets on Wednesdays and it helps with judicial appointments.
Okay.
And it's the entirety. Now it's more of an opportunity for people to grandstand and make headlines.
Yes.
But after that,
or put it on their CV or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. But after that, and then maybe sheriff, you go right to your larger level, state level, legislative
stepping
level.
Stone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So for me, I found this so interesting because the library board, the library trustees, I felt like we were insulated from everything that was happening because you would think if all of this is such an issue, if you were afraid of critical race theory and people bringing pornographic materials into your schools, why would you also not be a little nervous about it coming into your library? So that always struck me as interesting that they would target one and not the other.
Away from that because of optics, because book banning is a pretty obvious thing.
Oh, they were not afraid of that.
Oh, really?
They
weren't afraid of that?
No, they organized, and it got to a point that one of the last things my board did before I left office was we put a policy in place to remove books from schools. I'm not happy about it.
No.
I'm not happy about it.
Oh, no.
But, it's what the parents wanted.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a sign of things to come. And I will say, I don't know how things are now. I've been meaning to get in touch with my former colleagues, but it sounds like since I've left, a lot of parents have, and people in the community have set eyes on the library for any number of reasons.
So they've gone from the schools to the library now.
I think that's because the conversation has shifted from just critical race theory to more this notion that there are inappropriate pornographic books in our schools and our libraries, and we have to get rid of them.
I see.
So it's this natural progression of, this is the current.
What's the next hatred we can move on
exactly.
to? Yeah.
So, I mean, I was fortunate enough that never happened during my term on the library board, but I mean, I had everything going on with school committee, so I can't complain too much.
Were the libraries even open, or was there like special hours?
We found a way. I was very proud of our board.
Okay. Ours closed down, and we had kind of a bookmobile that was separate from the library.
We couldn't let people access the facilities in the very early days of COVID.
Okay.
But what we could do is we still ran the library and made sure that people could get materials. Okay. We had it set up so that they could access the library. We had staff on site. They would bring the materials out to them. They would have drop-off sites.
It's kind of like what we did. We just
had people who sanitized books.
Yeah.
And then as soon as we could, we opened, and we were an early library to get away with that, and it was great because people loved my community's library, and I can't blame them. And I'm glad that we were able to deliver these services still.
I love libraries.
I do too. I think they have such an important purpose, and I know that
they're always at the forefront of free speech rights and all that.
Well, that's the thing. Like people like to rib me for being a bad conservative, a bad libertarian, a conservatarian.
Why?
Because of my love of libraries. But I'm like, look, libraries, not only are there bastions of free speech and free access.
The founding fathers made the country's first libraries, yo.
Yeah, for real. Plus, think of the role they play in communities now. You have families who may not be able to be there for their children after school because they're working and trying to make a living. Yeah. The library is there to give them a place to be that's safe. Right. It gives them things to do in the day so they don't end up with idle hands and falling into whatever God knows is out there.
Yeah, they're
so important.
I used to hang out with this little 4-year-old who was the daughter of a friend of mine, and I'd babysit sometimes. And she loved going to the library because she was mostly around adults and most of the time. And so, but the library, other parents would bring their kids there. And so she kind of learned how to play there. Yeah. She didn't know how to play, right? Like sharing and so it was great. Yeah.
For me, it was always an extension of just self-improvement, which I see as that personal responsibility aspect that we preach so much. Right. Because, I mean, you're in school for 12 years, maybe 13 if you go to kindergarten. If you're lucky, you go to college and you get 2 to 6 years of college, depending on what degree you're aiming for. And that's it for education. Yeah. But a library is a place that exists where no matter how old you are or where you are, you have a place that you can go to and continue to further your education and learn new things and become a better person.
That's right. And there's
with minimal cost to you.
There's no standard, too.
Yeah.
You don't have to, like, get a grade or whatever.
Exactly.
It's just whatever you want to
at your speed. And at your, it's great.
What I would do, I just love libraries. I would go and get, like, most of the books from a particular author. And that may sound terrible, but I would just have this pile and bring them home, and they'd be all over my bed, and I just devour them.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's so weird. I mean, I think back now, because I've become enamored with things like TikTok and more like quick media.
Okay.
It's
that's beyond me. I don't know what that's.
It's probably a good thing because it's completely eroded my ability to just enjoy books like I used to. It's like shortened my attention span. I swear, it's awful.
Okay.
Read a book if you're gonna watch it. For every TikTok, read a book. I know that's like 20 books, like within 10 minutes, but do it anyway.
Read Octavia E. Butler.
Ooh.
Do you know who that is?
I do.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's a good recommendation. Don't you think?
It is. I co-sign on this.
Yes.
But yeah, so after I left office, I'm like, well, I could take a break or I could keep doing what I'm doing. So I went with that instead. So, I've been involved now in an organization in Massachusetts, and while I will be moving shortly, I'm still going to continue to remain because I'm not far from Massachusetts.
Yeah.
My heart is in Massachusetts.
What, like half an hour away or something? Or the border?
Not even from here. I would say it's like 25 minutes, if that. And
you know it down to the minute,
right? Oh, I've made many drives to and from.
Yeah.
So for me, like, I'm still going to stay involved in Massachusetts because that's my family, my friends, my colleagues, my professional connections.
And the Boston metro area is the regional hub.
Exactly.
I mean, it is,
So I'm still very involved with a statewide organization in Massachusetts now called Mass Equality.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so they're the state affiliate for the Equality Federation, which means they're the big equality org for the state. We do a lot of work with... we have legislative priorities. We go into communities. We do testimonies.
Is this lobbying or is this education?
It's both.
Okay.
We have a C3, we have a C4, and there's a PAC board.
Okay.
So we hit all aspects of government in a way that we're able to and still follow the law. I'm on the C4 side, so that means I get to do all the fun political organizing.
Are you supporting any particular legislation or policy changes or...
So the big thing right now for Mass Equality is that we are focused heavily on sex ed, especially a more LGBTQ inclusive sex ed in those districts that allow for it.
Yeah.
We're also really big on the gender updates, gender marker updates on our legal documentation in Massachusetts, especially for gender X. For our non-binary
That would be
viewers.
a big deal in an old state like this.
Oh, yeah. So, like, those are just two parts of our legislative priorities right now, plus a few other things, like getting more funding for, like, AIDS research and, the kind of stuff that will always be important because there will always be people who
always
need...
the background stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Always the background stuff. Yeah. And it's something that actually came up during all of this when I was on the board, because I was invited to join Mass Equality.
Isn't that
before
lovely?
It was such a great... Let me tell you, it was such a great feeling. Yeah. Mass Equality has been one of the few organizations out there to give me the time of day because of my political affiliations.
Right, because you're Republican.
There are so many other orgs that just kind of like look at me and they're like, hit the bricks.
Yeah,
and it's because like I'm not of their tribe. Which blows my mind, because at the end of the day, we probably agree on more than some of your Democratic representatives do.
Right.
So, like, it's just, I'm happy that Mass Equality understands that when they say they want to represent everyone and deliver equality and ensure that people are free from discrimination, they mean everyone. And they're not going to turn away people just because we happen to maybe vote for different candidates on occasion. I
have a more specific question about that. So, and you don't have to give a specific example, it can just be general, but do you think that as somebody who's more liberty and right focused, that you have directly contributed to some of the conversations there in that sort of aspect?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the things I'm happy about is my joining the board coincided with their relocating from Boston to Worcester.
Oh, awesome.
And part of the reason why they did that...
That is wonderful. I love that.
Isn't it?
I love that.
Part of the reason why they did that was...
Because everything gets, defaulted to the big cities.
Right.
You know?
And when that happens, the things that happen in the smaller suburban rural communities just kind of fall through the cracks.
Right.
And that's the exact reason why we moved. Because we've done a lot of good work in Boston, but Central and Western Mass, that's where all of these stories still happen.
Right.
Like my experiences, could they have happened in Greater Boston? Maybe. If they did, they wouldn't have been nearly as bad. Right. But Central Mass, where I live, where it's a Republican hub, it's where conservatism in Massachusetts still has a home.
Right.
You end up with all different strains of conservatism, including the ones that are extremely hostile towards our community.
Right.
So for me, the fact that Mass Equality not only takes that serious, but has a spot for me to contribute.
Why did they do that?
Relocate?
Yeah.
Because my understanding, the decision happened to coincide. I can't take any credit for it, but my understanding is that Mass Equality recognized that they had good contributions in Boston, but there are other organizations in Boston as well also doing the work.
Right.
So they moved to the place where there hasn't really been much representation on the ground.
That's wonderful. I love that.
I really wish more orgs would kind of take a note or take a hint and do the same thing, because those people are the ones that still have a lot of the horror stories.
Yeah.
I mean,
also there's there is a migration of LGBT people to bigger cities. I mean, that's always happening, right? But also there are LGBT people who are moving away from the cities for economic reasons. Yeah. You know, even though it may be safer and they might have more like medical care options or something like that. Oftentimes it's economic drivers that are moving people away from the cities. So it's extending the services. Yeah. When LGBT organizations actually take into account more rural or small towns. You know?
Healthcare actually is a big reason for that too. I mean, in Boston, we have Fenway Health, which is one of, I think if you're a trans person in New England, you either know of it or you have been there yourself. Yeah. It's one of the best places to go in this area. But
they're having some trouble.
I have heard that they are having some trouble.
They need a new director. They need some help. But yeah.
But the problem
it's one of the places that you go.
The problem is that you shouldn't have to go there if you need like affirming healthcare and people who treat you with dignity and respect when you're in their office. So Mass Equality, by moving out to Worcester, we can actually be in those communities where people, maybe they don't have the ways and means to hike an hour and a half east of Boston, but they can see their local doctor 20 minutes, 10 minutes down the road, and maybe their local doctor could use some training and some better knowledge on how to be more acceptable, inclusive to their patients. Yeah, we're here for that.
I was meeting some people in Florida who have to go literally hours away, from Central Florida down to Miami, which is, that's basically the space of New England,
I actually resonate with that too, because I didn't have to go that far, but I actually was a person who could not find healthcare in Central Mass. Yeah. I had to go to Boston, to Fenway.
Yeah,
and
it happens. Yeah.
Because there's such a bottleneck from everyone being forced to do the same, it took me forever to get in. So I've talked about this sometime.
That's because the competency, like we've been saying, hasn't been spread out. Yeah. I don't know why. Maybe doctors are a little bit afraid, or NPs are a little bit afraid. They don't have to be afraid. Just get some more education, there are people in your communities who are queer and trans who need help,
It was a big thing for me, though, because I was one of those people for so long, and I knew who I was. I was getting therapeutic
that you
help
were
and talking.
Trans?
I absolutely knew. I was talking to people. I was talking to professionals, but actually getting to a primary care physician in an office like that who would give me the care that I needed was so hard. So I could never find the care that I needed out in Central Mass. Yeah. And the doctor that I did have, actually, when I am someone... excuse me. Oh, no problem. I was someone who had to resort to DIY. Oh. And I don't recommend that, because there are so many ways that could go wrong. Yeah. You don't know where you're getting these things from. I was someone who had that experience. Yeah. And I did DIY until I was able to finally get an appointment in Boston. That should have never have had to happen. Right. And the doctor that I had in Central Mass, when he found out that I was doing DIY, because I was like 4 or 5 months in at that time, he made me quit cold turkey. Right. Which was such a shock on my body. And he gave me nothing to follow up for resources, except he's like, well, there might be someone like an hour and a half in Western Mass so you could go to, and I'm like, that sounds
punitive.
It is. And that's why I'm like, this is absurd.
But it's because you couldn't access healthcare, and now somebody that you're going to that's supposedly cool, is punishing you.
Yeah, I know.
That's crazy.
That's why I'm happy that we're able.
I'm going to tell you, I actually had a similar experience at Fenway recently. Really? I've been on hormones for 22 years, you know. And I was telling him, this is why people go to the black market. Yeah. This is why people self-medicate. You know, it's not cool to do this kind of gatekeeping. It's not. Yeah.
It's not, and I understand that, you know, they have to follow certain standards at times, but
would they deny other people medication? They wouldn't.
No. And even with a modicum of training, I think a lot of places in Central and Western Mass would be so much more accessible to trans and queer people. Yeah. And that's why I'm grateful that we're able to be out there, because we're now a resource. Yeah. This is all happening in Massachusetts. Yeah. Think about those states that are a lot more regressive and reactionary in their laws for affirming healthcare.
I know people who've gone from North Carolina to Michigan to get healthcare. Wow. They've jumped in their truck and gone all the way. Yeah.
It's rough. Yeah. So that's something that I have been throwing myself into. I'm now the program's co-chair, and I have a house party next week where it's going to be a fundraiser, and we're going to do some local entertainment. It's going to be the first time that we've really had this kind of event in our part of Massachusetts too. Yes. And our part
happens. Are you getting ready for any kind of pushback about that?
There is a thought. Yeah. What we're doing is we are trying to limit knowledge of the location. We're gonna, for everyone who's committed to going, we're gonna let them know ahead of time, because we do want it to be safe. We do want it to be a good time, and because of my executive director having the reputation that they have, and because of me having the reputation that I have in our community, it is the kind of thing that I would not be surprised if someone had heard about it, they would show up. Yeah. I don't want that.
You know who's helpful in that, I find, is bringing in some religious people who are cool, and they can kind of quell things a little bit or use their influence. Oh, yeah. You know? Yeah.
I mean, I like that too. That's the kind of thing that I'd like to contribute more to Mass Equality as well, because we talk about different things, and especially now that I'm on the programs committee, like the kind of events we do for community outreach, I would like to see us do more events like that so we can reach those members of the community. Not only that, I would like to see us do some more things where we partner with groups like the Pink Pistols. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Could you imagine like a statewide equality org doing a gun safety course for our community?
Some people would, on the left would freak out about that, though.
It's true, but like at the same time, it's there's no shame in being safe, and
I love it that you're pushing that, though.
That's the kind of stuff that if you are a Republican or a Libertarian or a conservative and you are at the table, you can make suggestions like this. You got to fight for them, but that's how you actually do it.
I love it.
So, you know, but again, you have to be open to communication. You're going to get some pushback.
And that really shouldn't be a right-left issue, because people have the right to defend themselves, and especially people who are vulnerable. Yeah. Like queer people and trans people and people of color. So it just drives me nuts that the Democrats keep pushing this. Yeah. You know, I would rather see that Beto guy or whatever, Beto guy, sorry. I would rather see him become governor of Texas, because Greg Abbott is obviously a monster, an absolute monster. Oh, but Beto is a putz, and he keeps pushing for gun control and stuff. So, I mean, Democrats, get a better person to go up against Abbott. You know, somebody who is more interested in the history of Texas and how people actually feel there about, you know, self-defense and that sort of thing.
If you ask me, at the end of the day, neither major party is sending their best right now.
No, I don't think so.
We're getting
we've seen several cycles of that. I mean, Hillary Clinton, come on, awful.
When she ran again the second time, I was just blown away, because I'm like,
she's cutting she's like, I'm just a pragmatist, so you black people need to do what I think you need to do, and you know, we need to drop these trans issues because we need to get in office. Like, I mean, she was directly saying stuff like that. Yeah.
No, sorry, I believe I hear my phone. No, they can wait.
Okay, well, we can take a break. Let's take a break. Okay, so we took a little break. I had to do some coughing, unfortunately. I got a cold a couple weeks ago, and I still have a little cough, which is annoying. And then my dog was needed some loving up, and you also took a break. I don't know what you were doing, because my dog was all over me. It's an internet break. That's not really a break, but
yeah, for real. Tell me that at work.
Anyway, speaking of that, though, I really appreciate the time that you're devoting to this interview, because I mean, it sounds like you're just an astoundingly busy person. And this is a fairly long interview, so I just really appreciated that. I appreciate that.
No, of course. It becomes easy to become a busy person when like you don't have a strong community at first, because you find ways to supplement that. And for me, just getting involved was how I did it, and then it just kind of ballooned into like 800 other responsibilities that I've kept over the years.
Well, it makes sense too that you want to retain ties with your previous communities and also some of the activism down there, because I mean, you're from there, and New Hampshire is not far away, at least this place where you're living, and so maybe you can even bring some of that up here, because probably New Hampshire is not as advanced in some issues, I would think.
Oh yeah.
So it's great that you're here, because you could probably do a lot of work here. You know, it's another opportunity for you to do a lot of stuff.
I see it in two fronts. On one hand, my understanding is that New Hampshire does not have an organization on the ground with the Equality Federation.
Okay.
And I've talked with my executive director about when I'm no longer able to effectively serve Massachusetts, I will look at starting one up here. Yeah. You know, do the work that we do in Massachusetts, but up here in New Hampshire.
And is this a specific Massachusetts organization?
So the Equality Federation is a nationwide.
Okay.
Like it's like a collective of different statewide advocacy orgs for the community. All right. Mass Equality is the Mass affiliate, but there really isn't one in New Hampshire.
Okay.
So it's open to anyone who wants to pick up the mantle. So I'm like, why not? It's something I know well. Plus, as soon as I am re-established and settled, I am absolutely going to get back into the political arena. Yeah. Because being community-minded is just something I've always liked. So I'm not going to give up on that yet either.
Yeah, yeah.
It'll be a little bit of a different Republican Party. But
speaking of that, well, how is it different? How's it different? Because these are very different states, what I'm gathering. Yeah.
For the longest time, I would say that the Massachusetts Republican Party was defined by its identity as the Massachusetts Republican Party. And by that, I mean you have Republicans who understand the area that they live and they represent, and they don't take the hardline stance that a lot of other national Republicans would. That ends up cultivating a type of candidate and official who tends to be, I would say, almost more urban-minded in their approach to governance, like taking into consideration that you need to be open to things like public transit and the needs of a diverse variety of people, and healthcare. Healthcare is a big one. Racial equity issues is a big thing too, especially in Massachusetts with our cities. So,
which are surprisingly segregated.
Oh yes, it is. It's something that we really have to look at as a Commonwealth. Yeah. And then the other big one is that a lot of Republicans in Massachusetts tend to be a bit more open and accepting of our community, because this is
LGBT
New England as a whole tends to be a safe and inclusive place, at least more so than other areas.
And I'll tell you, people are moving here because of that.
Oh yeah, I believe, especially right now. So the Republican Party naturally evolved in a way to be competitive and represent people in that area. That has changed over the last few years, especially since Trump came and his administration came and went. And you're seeing a dramatic change in the personality of Republicans in Massachusetts. But I would say that personality that they're undergoing now, that's been the personality of Republicans in a state like New Hampshire. So that will be a bit of a change.
So it's less welcoming, maybe more crass in the rhetoric.
I would say it's more crass in the rhetoric, only because I think we've said it earlier, but you get a lot of different strains of people who come up to New Hampshire, especially in the libertarian and conservative movements. So you definitely see that reflected in the party and its leadership and the directions it goes in. So what that means for Massachusetts, it's hard to say. I just know that Charlie Baker isn't going to be around anymore, and you're now contending with Geoff Diehl as the potential Republican frontrunner, which I think says volumes about the state of the Mass Party.
I know nothing about him, though. I've just seen his name on the sign. So what is your take on him?
He is, to kind of summarize, Geoff Diehl is a former legislator in the Mass House who was very involved with the Trump campaign. I believe he has Trump's endorsement right now, and he has enamored himself with the culture war that's been happening, and he's been leaning heavily into that. But that doesn't really play in a place like Massachusetts. Instead
of focusing on policy,
that's what I'm saying.
Riling up bigotry, basically.
And the only people who resonate with that are the kind of people who would show up at a school committee meeting and do the things that I experienced. So it's not the kind of constituency that would win a state like Massachusetts. Okay. It's a constituency that might carve out a couple House seats here or there.
Right. And the level of education here is really high.
Yes.
So I would hope that people wouldn't fall for that.
Yeah, but it's sadly taken hold in the party pretty strongly. Okay. And I mentioned this before. I ran for state committee in 2020.
Yeah,
before I pivoted.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, before I pivoted to the school board, I ran for Republican state committee. And Massachusetts, and you'll have to excuse me, I don't know if it's the same like this in every other state. In Massachusetts, the parties are governed by a body of elected party members from different regions, and they are elected on the same ballot as the presidential primary. Okay. So the state committee is the executive body of the political party in Massachusetts. Okay. So for the point of the Republican state committee, you have 40 state committee men and you have 40 state committee women, and they come together, they select the party officers, they select the chairs.
It is balanced that way?
It is balanced that way.
Wow. I've never heard of that.
However, the Massachusetts Dems, they have state committee men, state committee women, they have non-binary seats, they have disability seats, they have seats for people of color. Okay. They have everything.
Sure.
If you ask me, I think they actually have more seats than they have people to fill them. Okay. Whereas the Republican Party has too few seats for the kind of place that Massachusetts is.
Sure.
So
that's interesting. I've just never heard of that being the case.
It's a very weird system. Yeah. But what it means is that if you are a party member, you have a real chance to actually run for an office on the ballot that influences the party that you're a member of. So after everything that happened with LCR and endorsing Trump, and I don't know if you ever read it, but I wrote a really scathing rebuke of Log Cabin in The Advocate.
No, I didn't read that, but I will.
It was kind of like my public breakup letter with them. I will look it
up.
Yeah.
I'll put a link to it on
Thank you, because I mean, they didn't even consider. There weren't many other strong Republicans running. Yes, but Bill Weld, he was running, the only Republican I can think of who created a state commission for the LGBTQ community, particularly the youth.
Yeah, I heard he's pretty good.
Yeah, so I'm just like, it blows my mind. So after that happened, I'm like,
well,
okay.
I mean, what is it? How I just don't understand how people, I guess I'm naive, how people can excuse being bigots if you're into individual freedom and privacy and... That just doesn't make sense to me. But anyway, let's talk again.
So after that happened, I'm like, you know what? Like, here I am. I'm doing this advocacy. I'm writing op-eds and articles. Yeah. That's
big time stuff.
It is, but I felt like I had to put my money where my mouth was. Yeah. So I'm like, I'm going to run for state committee. Let's do it. So
fuck it.
2020 election was coming up.
I'll say it. Fuck it.
At this time, I mean, the biggest race I had ever run prior to this was I had run for a school committee before. Yeah. It's a 2-committee town. Even then, I represent only one community. And the state committee, I was running for a 27-town district against an incumbent who wasn't exactly... This incumbent was, I would say...
it's okay.
I would say that this incumbent was friendly to the more moderate wing and a target of... I guess uninterest by the I guess you could say Trump wing, the outsider wing compared to how the makeup for the Mass GOP was. So I'm like, this isn't okay. I'm going to run against the seat. I have nothing bad to say about my opponent. Yeah. I just want to run on the issues. Yeah. I want to talk about the principles of being a Republican. You want to talk about your
competency too.
Thank you.
Yes.
I wanted to actually
all this finger pointing. I'm like,
I hate it.
You're weak when you do that.
I hate it.
All that stuff. I don't like that.
So I wanted to be the kind of candidate that I would vote for. Mm-hmm. So I ran on a platform that resonated with my beliefs as as a Republican. I ran on a platform that touched upon actually respecting the rule of law in Massachusetts. That includes equality for the queer and trans communities. I ran about trying to find ways to improve...
For everybody.
Right.
Freedom for everybody.
Yeah. I ran on trying to find ways to improve how we engage with our urban centers in our cities. I ran on actually taking racial equity issues into consideration. So we really are an approachable party. Yeah. And I also ran on cleaning corruption because a big thing was the party had just migrated to their HQ to a new community, and I think it went from Boston to Taunton or Newton. I got to check again. Okay. But there was
the western suburbs.
Yeah. So there was a question of spending. There was a lot of issues surrounding how Mass GOP was handling its finances. That became an issue at the time for other candidates running for state committee.
Did this become a legal thing?
It's still. I would say it still is.
Still is.
I would say that
it's still in the running.
If you look up our chairman's name and then you look up like legal or finances, you're gonna find some articles. Or treasury.
So it's still being investigated.
Yeah, there's still a lot of questions over how money was spent. But the other thing that I ran on was trying to just listen to the town committees. Yeah. Because I don't know. Again, I don't know what other states.
27 of them. Exactly. How do you do that?
Exactly. I'm representing effectively 27 town Republican parties, and each one is definitely going to be a little bit different. Yeah. And one of the issues that I heard from some of them is that their current member of the state committee just wasn't there. Okay. So I ended up actually getting an endorsement from one of the town committees that I never even asked for. It was really because they're like, well, she'll stick up for us.
Because she'll show up.
Yeah, she'll show up. Wow. So I was like, ooh, thanks. Wow.
That's cool.
It was great. But it was a new race. It was interesting. It was the first time I was really putting myself out there to that degree as a Republican candidate. Yeah. And I went to a couple events. I toured my district, and my district is huge. My district borders Connecticut and New Hampshire. Okay. It's just like it's a huge swath of central Mass. Yeah.
So it's basically like a section, a slice of it. Wow.
I would say if you looked at the map, it would probably almost look like Vermont in how it was shaped. Yeah. Wow. So
is that just outside of Boston metro area?
It was a little bit further west.
Okay.
So I would say the furthest east my district went still. It wasn't anywhere near Boston, but it was probably, it abutted a community like Worcester, and then it abutted a community like
Framingham or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
So So it was a pretty big district, and I was running in places where my community knew me. Yeah. I mean, I had established myself, and I had been an active face out and about for years. Right. But these other communities had no idea who I was. Yeah. And here I am running as a trans woman, and that was another point of contention too, because since our seats are gendered, there was I didn't know this until after the fact, but there was a conservative newspaper, there still is, in Massachusetts that
what's it called?
This one was the New Boston Post. Okay. And they actually reached out to the party and to the Secretary of Commonwealth's office to ask if I could run and serve as a trans woman. Because they're like, can a trans woman run for committee woman? Okay. I mean, if she was assigned male at birth, surely she can't serve if she's elected. Right. The Secretary of Commonwealth is like, she can run. Yeah. I can run. Yeah. And then the Mass GOP proper never gave them an answer. Wow. And I've always wondered, what would they have done if I had won? Would they have stopped me? I can't say for sure.
What do you think about the political climate now? Do you think you would have more trouble with that?
I think so. Yeah. I think if I ran and I won, I don't know if they would seat me without some kind of legal fight, because they've already had some legal squabbles over other state committee victors who they haven't sat or took a long time to sit.
I mean, besides just ignoring that you are a woman, I mean, it's just so archaic.
It is. And I mean, 40 and 40, it's an interesting model. Does it accurately represent every Republican in Massachusetts? No, of course not. No. Does it accurately represent any party that it's set for? No, of course not. But I figured it's a mechanism. I have a say. I'm a member of the party, and I'm a vocal one. Let's do it. So I ran this race, and I got to say, it was a very eye-opening experience.
I'm not trying to shine you on, but you are just incredibly strong.
Oh, thank you.
And you're so like bubbly at the same time. I'm like,
I have fun with what I do.
Yeah, it's really great. It's really great.
Obviously, I didn't win. But I will say that I had a great experience doing it. Well,
people often lose like the first big try that they do,
And I'm not even upset with my performance because, like, I still, I was successful in my town. I won my town. I come close to winning some other districts in the broader, or other areas in the broader district.
I gotta say, I love it that one town was like, yeah, we want you because you're going to show up. That's so great.
I love that.
Yeah.
That was such a nice little endorsement.
Yeah.
There's a picture of me outside their welcome to sign because, like, since they endorsed me, I made sure to show up there on voting day.
Yeah.
But I actually ran into some issues when I was running because that movement I referenced earlier back in the day.
Did they follow you?
So they've splintered. A number of them have become quite active in the modern Mass GOP. And some of them are I would say, are almost power brokers.
Okay.
And
so they've graduated to being even worse bigots or whatever.
I would say, I don't even know if, like, this one, I wouldn't even call this one particular individual a bigot. I would call this one particular individual someone who definitely knows what they're doing.
Okay.
And who is hoping to further the mission of Ron Paul at the end of the day, so even if other people don't really realize it anymore.
Manipulative and trying to get on the inside there.
I'd say he's a good politician.
Okay. Well, yeah, you have experience with that. I don't.
So what got me once was this race.
I can't believe that people are still pushing the Ron Paul thing. I mean,
oh yeah,
I'm just flabbergasted.
Well, the thing is that Donald Trump actually adopted some pretty Paulite positions, and that resonated with his supporters. And I could go on.
Okay, well that makes sense now because I was just like, what? Why is this guy still coming?
Especially on foreign policy and things like.
Okay.
So. My race, as I said, it was on the presidential primary ballot.
Yeah.
So I got to appear on a ballot with Donald Trump. Well, that was fun.
That's wild. That's wild. I've also seen you in pictures with various people too, like kind of famous people.
I try to go everywhere. You know, if I can go and if I can be positive representation, I'll do it.
Yeah.
So my race was on the primary ballot. Which meant I was active in campaigning right around the primary season, especially when it was earlier on and there was actually more to kind of watch and get involved with on the Republican side. So I went to Bill Weld's.
What a wild trip.
It really was.
Were you ever like at Trump rallies or, you know what I mean?
I never went to a Trump rally.
Okay.
I had tickets to one in Worcester just because it was in my backyard effectively.
Right.
But I ended up not being able to go to that one. I have seen and I have been near Donald Trump on a few occasions, especially at CPAC because I'm sure you know Jennifer Williams, but
no.
Oh, she's from Trenton.
Okay.
She was the first trans RNC delegate.
Oh, okay.
And her and I have been not so much recently since it kind of veered off its old course, but her and I used to go to CPAC every year. And we would do positive representation and answer questions, introduce people who would go to CPAC to real trans people in real life.
Yeah.
We would answer their questions.
Have you been going recently?
Not since they stopped having it in Maryland.
Okay.
Now it's like it feels like they have it every couple months.
Yeah.
It seems so frequent, but no, I haven't been to it since it moved to Houston.
This last one has been very controversial.
I heard. Yes. I have a lot of thoughts about CPAC as someone who has given that organization so much money and tickets over the years.
And it's time and your organizational ability and everything.
Breaks my heart.
Yeah.
But so here I am running, and I went up to New Hampshire because obviously I've been pretty vocal in my dislike of Trump, and I was very open in my support of Bill Weld.
Yeah.
I'm a Massachusetts homegirl, and I love supporting, my home state candidates, but also a Republican who I felt like resonated with me genuinely in 2020. So
principled and helping people. Awesome.
Yeah. Doing the work.
Yeah.
So I went up there to support him as you do. And here I am in New Hampshire, actually probably about 15 minutes from here, that he had his campaign night rally. Not really a rally, more like a campaign party. And people snapped photos of me, and I was attacked later that week by an organization in Massachusetts for being caught at this Bill Weld rally. And I'm like, who did this?
Yeah.
Who snapped a photo of me up there? And it blows my mind. I still have never been able to
It's almost like some people were kind of like watching your career a little bit.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I still have not been able to find out who did it, but lo and behold, it was like I forget, it was like Renew Republican or Renew the Mass GOP or something. It was like an organization of true conservatives, type deal.
The true ones.
Yes. So that next day they popped up a photo and they're like, you can't support Jordan Evans. She's a fake Republican. Here she is with Bill Weld. She doesn't support Donald Trump. And I'm like, who are you people with their thousands of followers? How'd they find me? Yeah. So that was the real only time I actually was, I guess, attacked during my entire state committee run. And I mean,
that sounds really creepy, like almost like stocky behavior.
It was so weird. Yeah, I mean, I was flattered more than anything. I was equal parts flattered, equal parts genuinely surprised.
Well, it shows how powerful you are, for one thing. But then, you have to deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, like, they tried to attack me with it. And I'm like, yeah, okay, great. I'll put up my own pictures. Thanks. Sure. You know what? I didn't get this photo of me. This is great. Let me just save it.
Yeah.
So that happened. And then dark money got involved in our state committee races in 2020.
What is dark money?
So dark money has a lot of definitions, but in Massachusetts, dark money actually is a bit more tangible in our races because our state committee races are not bound by campaign finance law.
Oh, by the, what is it, FEC?
They don't ask for finance reports or anything. So if you're running for state committee and you're a candidate, there's nothing stopping you from accepting and spending unlimited amounts of money from PACs and everything without having to report it. So what happened was a PAC popped up, and there were two PACs, one associated with Charlie Baker and one associated with people who were vehemently opposed to Charlie Baker, and they were just funneling money into these state committee races. Okay. And it became a huge thing where if you got a mailer and it was from this zip code, don't back that candidate. I think it was the zip code that the Baker PAC was operating out of, but like effectively it was just 01 whatever it was, don't support them. So that popped up a few times in my race. I did do some radio, some Boston radio. I think I spoke to Howie Carr, who is a very conservative figure out here, a very conservative figure. So I went on.
I've been living in Alaska.
Remember that's fair. So he's like one of those big time conservative AM radio types.
All right.
And like he was giving the state committee candidates time to just chime in and make their case. Right. So I'm like, I'm a state committee candidate. Yeah. I'm going to do it. Yeah. So I went on there and I'm like, look, I don't take any side in this inter-party squabble. These are the principles that I believe in. This is what I stand for. This is what I promise to do for you as your Republican state committee woman. That's all I got. Yeah. So they actually did not interfere in my race. There was no PAC money spending. Although there was a mailer, a blast by my opponent. And it was really interesting because my opponent did a joint mailer with the candidate running for the state committee man side because they're siblings actually. Okay. It was a brother-sister team. So they're like, vote for this family, vote for the Valenzuelas.
Like a dynasty or whatever?
They've been in government. Okay. I don't know if they're quite dynasty tier, but they're definitely their name. Okay. So they did a mailer, and I was thinking of doing something like that, but I'm like, you know what? I'm the kind of person who likes to actually go in person and canvass and shake hands. So the only thing I did for the mailer,
whenever I get those mailers too, I must say I just generally just put them in the trash. I mean,
especially lately, they've been lacking creativity. So this mailer comes and it has a big picture of Donald Trump with a thumbs up, and it's like, we are the Trump candidates and we oppose socialism, but they spelled socialism wrong. Oh, they spelled it SoCalism.
Oh my goodness! Oh.
Being me, I was having fun with it at this point. I knew I was in an uphill battle. So what I ended up doing was I took a picture of their ad where they misspelled socialism. Sure. And I'm like, unlike my opponent, I stand for SoCalism. I think we should have an In-N-Out burger at every corner.
Isn't SoCal where Hollywood is, where they make all those action movies and stuff? Right?
I mean, I don't know. If you're against SoCal, have you ever had In-N-Out? It's delicious. Yeah. So, I was just going to have fun with
Schwarzenegger lives?
Sometimes I just feel that when things get as serious as they are, you have to have some fun with it. Yeah. If not for yourself and your sanity, do it for your constituents. Because if they see that you're a normal person doing normal, typical person things, they're going to resonate with that, especially in a time where things are just so off kilter. So I didn't win the race. I took, I would say, about a third of the vote. So about 34% of my 27 town district voted for an open trans woman.
Yeah, that's pretty good, I think.
I was like, this is great.
Yeah.
Say what you will about Massachusetts
Republicans. And it sounds like
Republicans.
you're dealing with kind of nefarious forces a little bit,
yeah, that whole Bill Weld thing really threw me for a loop. And then
And the dark money and all the weird money. Mailers. I mean,
the questions from the press. There was one website that actually cataloged every single state committee candidate and candidate running for other legislative office in Massachusetts.
Hold on a second.
So, I mean, all things considered, like I did pretty well in a race where everyone else running for a state committee position seemingly was in the middle of warfare.
Yeah.
So I'm like, if a couple allegedly dirty photos of me at a Bill Weld rally are all it takes, then I can live.
Yeah. I'm sure some people really appreciated that too.
I hope so. Yeah. I really do.
Yeah.
But there was one website that cataloged every state committee candidate and gave like a bit of a backstory on them. And not only that, but they did the same for legislative candidates and their statewide candidates. And when they broke down every state committee candidate, they included me on that list too. And they called me a hormonally manipulated gender bent candidate.
What?
I'm like, my God.
That sounds like a bumper sticker.
Oh, yeah, it was wild. But the thing is that there were a number of establishment Republicans.
You know that thing about in UK where they're like, trans people can't exist in a sane world or whatever it is?
Yeah, it absolutely
it sounds
ridiculous.
Like something like that.
I loved it, though. It was so funny to me. I mean, obviously...
It's like a Saturday Night Live skit or
something. Exactly. But, like, I know there are people out there who, if they experienced that, it would be painful. They hate it. For me, I just kind of laughed it off.
Yeah.
Spam risk. I just kind of laughed it off. But I did post it on Facebook, and I'm like, can you believe this? And I had a number of people reach out, like establishment Republicans.
She said spam risk because she gets a lot of phone calls, and I guess her phone number's out there. But
I mean, my phone number is it's almost comical how easy it is. But so I put it out on social media, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. I had so many establishment Republicans actually reach out to me and be like, this is fucked up, for a lack of a better term. And I'm like, I'm glad that you all see it that way. Like, this is reaffirming to me.
I would like to see the Republicans become a little classier. And to do a more principled run like you did. I mean, that's a kind of conservatism and right wing kind of candidate that I would like to see out there.
I think what makes it really interesting in our current climate is that not all Republicans have gone the way that so many have with Trump. And in a place like Massachusetts, for instance, you really do have to do individual research on every Republican candidate because we have statewide candidates who are very vocal about their feelings and who are not like others. It really is like a candidate by candidate basis right now, especially in a place like Massachusetts. But
that's how I like to vote anyway. I like to vote on individuals. Yeah.
So, I mean, it was an interesting race. I would absolutely do it again. Next time, of course, I'll be doing it up in a place like New Hampshire where it's going to be a little bit different. Yeah. But, I think
this place is ripe for that, though. I mean,
they love outsiders.
And I've met so many people who've wanted to talk here. I mean, the most people in my project have been, contacting me recently, and they're all from New Hampshire. And I'm like, wow. Yeah. So there's something you could start here.
Live free.
Yeah. Live free or die. Yeah. Right.
So, I mean, other than that, I would say, I stay busy. I'm a multifaceted person.
Yeah. And speaking of that, I asked you earlier, part of this is about religious beliefs or if you're irreligious or something like that. And for me, being a religious person is a way that I take care of myself. And we were talking a little bit, and you mentioned that you are a religious person, and that might surprise people. So I was wondering if you could talk about that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think it does surprise people when they find out, because I'm not someone who's ever really strongly talked about religion, but it is something that is near and dear to my heart.
Yeah. As it should be, right? That's where it should come from.
Oh, of course. If your religion is not centered in your heart and your soul, then, I mean, what good is it going to do you or anyone? Yeah. So I was fortunate to come from a family that was very pluralistic in our experience to religion.
Okay. Eclectic? Or
my mother was a Protestant.
Okay.
My aunt and uncle were Muslims.
Oh, wow.
I have a brother who was born again. And some of my closest friends were devout Catholics and practitioners of Judaism. And
oh boy, that is very eclectic.
When I was growing up,
the Muslims, were they converts, or were they come from immigrants?
They were converts.
Okay.
But I tried to make a habit growing up to attend different services, not just because I wanted to experience the different services, but because I had a genuine interest, and I also was with my family at varying stages and times, and friends and all that. So I've been to Catholic Mass. I've prayed at Muslim mosques. I have participated in various pagan circles and rituals and all kinds of things. And it's introduced me to the different religious beliefs that people have. And the one thing that I've noticed at the heart of all of them is really just the shared sense of community and just wanting to be a good person and living in a world where there's so much unknown out there. And then having something to make that unknown a bit more, I guess, to make it make more sense. And when you look at things like that, you notice that there's a lot of similarities between different religions. So for me, I just kind of...
And it's a respite from, like, secular society and the stresses, you know.
So, I mean, I was not ever super vocal about it, and then coming out as trans made it even harder to be vocal about it, because we're from a community that is very irreligious, because
or irreligious.
Thank you. I always mix up my
well, both. They're both. Some people are just, you know, they don't consider it. Some people are against,
or they have personal hurt stemming from it, and I understand that. So I try to be mindful. I don't talk about it, but I am a Unitarian, and I am someone who, on occasion, will practice. I have a church.
Is this more of a churchy Unitarian, or is this more of a broad Unitarian?
I guess on my day-to-day, I'm a broad. But there is a church that whenever I'm in town, and I'm going to be there for a while, I have to go for the Sunday service. And that is the Provincetown Meeting House for the Unitarian Universalists. And every time I've been to P-Town...
That's quite a hike.
It is. But it was the first church, and I've been to a lot of churches where I went, and I felt so accepted and at home, and able to actually kind of explore these complicated feelings I have with God. And I make a habit to go to service on Sunday and participate.
It's so interesting, because I had a idea that maybe you would be more mainline Christianity. UU is a little bit more on the fringe.
It is.
A little bit, yeah.
It is, and I understand that, but I think I like it because...
That was just my bias.
I
was expecting that, actually.
It's a bias that I think is actually a little sensible, and if you ask anyone who identifies as UU, if they're on the fringe, they'll just say, like, yeah, probably. I mean, like, they don't want to rock the boat. They just want a sense of community and the opportunity and free ability to still pursue a sense of God and knowledge and understanding in a world where...
They're not prescriptive, which is great.
They give people the leeway to come to peace in terms with God in a way that's comfortable for them and in a speed that's comfortable for them.
I love how they do that with the kids. Like, they just... I don't know what they call it, but it's something like spiritual exploration. Like, it's a whole part of the process. And they're also broad enough that they encompass different subgroups who center different primary figures. Like the fact, like Muslims.
Exactly. Or if you're someone like me who acknowledges Christ, that's something that they're okay with. Like, you can still center Jesus Christ, and that's okay. Just know that there are going to be people who also center different religious figures, not all of them necessarily Abrahamic. But
and also within UU, there's also ones that I would say are more churchy.
Of course.
That are more focused on Jesus and the New Testament and that sort of thing.
So it's something that, you know, I don't talk about it often, but whenever I'm there, I attend services. I have been privileged and blessed enough to actually deliver closing remarks once.
Really? So you're a preacher too.
Well, it wasn't my intention. I used to be president of a Boston.
You're living like 9 lives in this life.
I'm practically a cat.
That's what people say about me sometimes. I tell stories and they're like, how many lives have you had? You know?
Well, prepare yourself.
Okay.
I used to be president of an all-trans Boston-based choir.
Oh, okay.
And
was it a religious-based choir?
It wasn't, but it was one of the only... It was the
second... Like a community choir?
It was a community choir. It was the second all-trans choir in the country.
Oh, man.
And we were invited...
I never heard of it.
We were called Butterfly. And we formally came to an end, I would say, start of 2017. But... We did try to keep going after, but it was hard because you had different views of how you wanted to take the choir. Do we want to perform? Do we want to make it kind of like a repertoire choir? Do we want to have it be a safe space where people can sing without having to be exposed to the public? it was hard to come to terms with. Yeah, so
it's almost like success was hurting you.
It was.
Yeah.
Because we had some press, and I think it generated lots of conflicting views.
Yeah.
So when I was president of the choir, I and other members of the committee and choir. In fairness, the choir was in like a state, and they were like, "You have experience with this. Do you want this responsibility?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll take it. Come on, let's go." So we got to go to P-Town because we were performing for kind of a known trans celebration out this part. Jenny Boylan once referred to it as one of the fiefdoms of the trans community. It's
You're talking about
Fantasia Fair, which is a P-Town based event, but I would say for like 2 weeks.
Kind of describe what Provincetown is about, just very briefly.
So P-Town, which is the shorthand for Provincetown, is a very, very Cape community.
Yeah,
imagine
it's right at the end of it.
It's the very tip of the arm, and it is probably one of the most queer and trans friendly places in Massachusetts, which is already a known queer and trans friendly place.
It's like a resort place.
Almost.
Yeah.
It's a collection of like seaside businesses and homes and summer cottages.
It still retains some of the fishing tradition there too.
I was actually just there
like Portuguese people.
Yeah.
And
I was just there I'd say about a month and a half ago. That's the last time I actually went to service. On top of that, and they had so much fresh fish. It's something they still do.
Yeah.
But
and they have bakeries there. And,
it's so good. If you have the ability to come to a place like B-Town, you got to try it at least once.
Yeah. I went out there and I didn't really participate in anything, but I just kind of walked around and looked, and I went to one of the bakeries, and just it was fun.
Yeah. It's
I loved
fun.
it. And the drive out there is beautiful. All those little towns.
I love the drive, but it is a bit lengthy.
It is
even
lengthy.
in a place like Massachusetts, it could take 3 hours to get
Surprising.
there from Worcester.
It's because it's kind of a spiral, so it takes forever. And these are small little towns, so you can't go all that fast.
So here I am, and we go down to P-Town to do Fantasia Fair, represent the choir.
And is this like a trans fair that happens every year?
It's a trans fair. Okay. I think it was started in like the 60s or 70s. It's old school.
I didn't even know that.
It primarily caters to, I would say, like when I was there were a lot of older trans femme people.
Right.
Effectively the people who can afford to drop the kind of money to stay in P-Town for 2 weeks.
That's amazing, because a lot of those older events have kind of gone away.
It's managed to survive the test of time.
Like, for instance, the Southern Conference. I was just talking to somebody about that, and I guess that's no more. But, I mean, that was going for a really long time, too.
This one, I think it's actually going to come up again. It's usually around Halloween month. So I'm sure it's still going to happen. But, so we went there as, like, representation and to kind of introduce them to our choir.
Yeah.
So one of the places where we were invited was the Meeting House. And being a Unitarian,
was this an old like Quaker meeting house?
It was a it was actually a proper Unitarian Universalist meeting house.
All right.
And I would say it definitely was AH though. It definitely stuck around for a while.
Harvard Divinity School was also UU.
Was it?
Yeah, it's UU.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. It split off from Andover. Andover. Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So we're at the church, and I was asked to deliver the closing remarks, which was hugely important
trans
to me.
Conference.
Hugely important to me, especially at this church.
Yeah.
And
Did they prepare you for that?
No.
Oh.
I
You just did it off the cuff.
Yep.
Wow.
That's kind of my. I like doing things off the cuff.
Okay.
Because I feel like you get the most authentic version. It does.
All right.
I do stand-up comedy, so it just gives me life. Well, instead of therapy, I just do stand-up. But so here I am.
Talk about risky.
Yeah, I know, right? What's the worst they're gonna do? Laugh at me? Come on, that's what I want them to do. So here I am at the church, and I'm thinking to myself, and I'm like, I have to deliver remarks. What am I gonna say?
Yeah.
So interesting thing about P-Town, can't explain it. It has foxes.
Okay.
Foxes live in Provincetown.
Sure.
They're friendly. They're like pigeons in a city.
Really?
They just come out, you see them, you're like, oh, hey, a fox. And the fox is like, oh, hey, a queer person. And then...
And they don't cause any trouble?
No.
Wow.
So I was staying with...
I don't like them because they eat chickens.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I keep chickens. Yeah.
Oh,
anyway.
I care for chicken. Anyway. Yeah. So I came from a choir member's place because we're all shacked up in different little summer cottages.
Sure.
So
I bet that cost a lot.
That's why we went, because we were they let us go for free.
Oh, wow.
I know.
Awesome.
I'm like, ooh, what a luxury.
Yeah.
So I'm coming back from one of our Sopranos houses, and I run into an all-white fox.
Oh.
I've never seen it. I'm tired. It's early morning. I'm like, am I imagining this? So I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, what could this mean? So
you're a little woo-woo in there too.
Yeah. So when I gave my closing remarks, I tried to get the fox to come over, because I know they were friendly, and I'm like, maybe if I try and like change the timbre of my voice, or like try and speak to it like I would a dog, maybe it'll come over and see me. It didn't.
Oh, yeah.
So when I was asked to deliver,
they are wild animals.
That's true, but if wild animal, why friend-shaped?
Don't feel too disappointed. They should be wary of people.
So when they asked me to deliver these closing remarks, I'm like, what do I talk about? And I'm like thinking like on the fly, like, what can we do? The white fox. Okay. So I went up there. Oh my God, it was a moment. I went up there and I started talking about the power of your voice and being authentic to who you are.
Sure.
And I tried to tie in elements of, on my way to church today, I ran into a white fox, and I tried to change the timbre of my voice, to talk in different ways, to make myself more acceptable for this fox, so that it would come over and see me and be friendly with me. And then I tied that to a personal story I had with one of my older best friends. We aren't really close anymore, and for years after I came out, they cut me out. This is someone who was in my life
because of the trans
yes
issue. Okay.
This was someone who was in my life for years and years, like a literal brother of mine, and he cut me out. And it was really painful, because the week before he found out that I was transitioning, I went out with his family for a dinner celebrating his sister's birthday, and his family was like, "You'll always be family to us."
Wow.
So it was really painful.
Yeah, that's like a ripping.
So here I am giving these remarks, and I'm like, and much like that fox, you can't change who you are, or your voice, or how you present yourself for anyone's satisfaction but yourself. If you try to change yourself, there's no guarantee that that person will still want to be near you or in your life. And that's okay, because you don't live for them.
Right.
That fox has its own life. I'm a random person.
And like I said, it has its own concerns.
So I tried to pull those parallels together.
Yeah.
And
that's cool.
Let me tell you something about talking to people who attend church. You are a shoo-in for a good closing remark if you cry. If you start crying on stage, everyone in the pew is going to cry too. It's great for pretty much church and church only. So I'm trying to tell this story about why you should never change your voice, because no matter what you think you can do,
and voice that's a big issue in the trans community.
Oh yeah,
what your voice sounds like.
See, I was thinking with layers.
Yeah, and if you can get yourself heard. Yeah, I agree.
So
I agree.
I told everyone there to just embrace your own voice.
Yeah.
Don't change who you are unless you're changing it for yourself.
Yeah.
Because there's no guarantee that who you're trying to change it for, or the fox that you see that you're trying to come over to you, is going to care.
Yeah.
But you can still do it for yourself or not do it for yourself.
Yeah.
So while I was telling that story and I equated it back to my old best friend, I started crying. People in the pew started crying. Everyone started crying. At the end, they were like, "That was such a good speech."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "It's only because I cried." But it was just such an important moment to me, and it kind of...
I mean, you really came up with something kind of on the fly that was meaningful for people. So good on you for that.
That's actually why I identify so strongly with that particular church as my home church, because the response I got in the sense of community that came from being in that place, I have not been able to duplicate anywhere else. And every time I go there, into that particular house of God, I still feel the same feelings I had after giving that first closing remark, and it's that's why I say it's my home church.
Yeah,
and
Spirit was guided through you.
Yeah,
I mean,
it was a moment.
That's my interpretation. But I mean, people, if you just become a vessel for something that is, even greater than yourself. Yeah, and that is community that you reached.
Right. Yeah, and that's why I really empathize, and I have a lot of trans friends and just broader queer friends who can't find that sense of community anymore since they came out.
Yeah.
And a number of them are still religious, and it rips them up inside. And I really feel for them, because I'm someone who fortunately still has that kind of community. It's far away, but
and COVID made
there.
That even worse too,
it really
because
did.
they closed the churches for a while. I don't know what they did here, but they did with my community, and that's not good. Yeah.
People need that. Although I will say, I did see that some churches evolved to have like right. teleservices, and I'm like, I love that actually. Right. That's right. I wish more churches would do that. But no, I will say the P-Town Church does stream their services, and I occasionally still tune in. So
I wonder if other people can tune in and feel that.
They really
sense,
should. It is
the
it
sense
is my
of
favorite
fellowship.
place.
The sense of fellowship.
Mm-hmm. And this is a conversation that I continued on the broader topic of the church. A conversation that I actually have with my executive director at Mass Equality. Oh. She herself is also religious and understands how difficult it can be to be a queer person in a religious area.
And also as a religious person, you can talk to other religious people and maybe bring them in more. Yeah.
I don't want to change someone's fundamental beliefs. However, I do want them to know that there are churches out there that will honor and respect their identity and still give them a safe place to connect with their higher power of choice.
And there's also a chance for churches and pastors to grow as well.
Of course.
If they see that there's, part of their flock out there that, isn't being served.
Yeah. So I just wish more people would make room for those of us in the community who do center religion at some part in their lives.
Yeah.
Because I think that we're all valid about that too. Like, we are very much a real group of people in the community who are hurting because of how religion has been used.
Right. And I got to praise you for that. They're really aggressive and going out there and being very welcoming and affirming. Also the Quakers, and there's the evangelical Lutheran Christian churches. There's a lot. There's very recently the Methodists are having a split, which I saw a Reason article
about that.
A Reason article came out about it, and it's just ridiculous because we need these splits actually. If there are people within a denomination who want to limit other people's rights or limit their ability to be a part of the church, that's not right. And
absolutely,
schisms are great, break apart. Anyway, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
This
has been great.
I love it. I just want to keep talking forever, but I think this is probably a good place to end it. So where do you think you'll be able to establish new church environs here? I mean, I know that's hard, but I mean, going to P-Town that's a little difficult.
It's a bit of a hike, but I think P-Town will always have a special place in my heart. I think I have to shop around. I have to do what I used to do. Go to services, sit in. If they're not for me, they're not for me. But if they are, I won't know unless I try. So
I've seen some UCCs, United Church of Christ, they're more congregational based, but they've had like rainbow flags up, and that's so important. I mean, if you really want to advertise that you're welcoming of people, put up those signs.
The name eludes me right now, but when we were practicing for our various groups and choirs with Butterfly, we would regularly meet in a church located in Greater Boston.
Okay.
One of the most inclusive and affirming churches probably that I've ever been to. They're out there. They really are out there. You just have to reach out to the community. And it may not be specific to the church that you grew up in or that but
might be a different denomination.
Right. Yeah. But it might end up just being your new home.
Yeah. Right.
So.
Yeah. I agree. Finding homes. It's always difficult. Yeah. All this moving. We're all moving. Yeah. Lots of people are moving right now or contemplating it. And I got to say, in my own way, whether you think this is important or not, I'm thinking about you, the people out there who are in strife, and I hope you find your home. Yeah.
For real.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Shane. This has been so good.
You get the double here.
This has been so fun.
Yeah. I Yeah, and I gotta say again, I really appreciate the time, because I know you're really busy. And
sorry, this carpet or this mattress just apparently shredded.
We're in a space that somebody is lending to us today, which is great.
Process of getting rid of it.
Yeah. So some of this is a little bit old. That's why it's
a little bohemian, but you know what?
It's okay.
I guess so am I sometimes.
I mean, I'm living in my car at the moment, so I have absolutely no complaints. I'm just glad to be inside. Actually, I'm wearing this hat because the environment is very healthy here, and when an environment is healthy, you get lots of bugs. And I have these welts on my head, actually, on my bald head, because some bugs bit me. Yeah, I don't know. You got some special flies up here, but...
That might be the mosquitoes. They're pretty vicious.
No, I don't think it was mosquitoes. No? I would have felt that. I think this was these little flies. The last time I was up here, I got them too, like the little black flies. They just got me.
I wonder if it's like, I used to live in Florida and they had a thing with no-see-ums, which are these small mites. No matter what you did, they would find you and they would bite you. And they would leave you alone after 2 weeks. It's very weird.
They will get you through the mosquito netting too.
Yeah.
They're just very tiny.
Can't be stopped.
Yeah, all the bugs love me. I don't know why, but... Anyway, thank you so much. I'm glad for the end of the heat wave, by the way.
Yeah, for real. Doing this in a 94-degree room. Oh.
Yeah. But this isn't too bad. Yeah, today it wasn't too bad. Thank goodness. All right.
Awesome.
Whew, how do we end these interviews? It's so difficult.
I think just kind of like let it go,
I'm looking forward to following all the great work that you're going to do in the future. Because, I mean, if this is where you're at a relatively young person, I'm a fan. I'm not usually a fan, but I'm a fan, okay? I'm a fan. And you better follow her too, because she's cool and she's interesting and she's doing a lot of work.
I make bad takes on Twitter, but it's still probably the easiest way to find me.
Yeah. I'm a bit of an agitator on Twitter, so don't follow me, but watch my videos, okay?
Co-signed.
All right. And thank you. All right.
That was good.
Ooh.
Oh, that was great.